Hello and welcome back to another edition of Electric Avenue's YouTube updates. Thanks for joining me, as many of you do every week. Really appreciate that. It's probably good sometimes to kind of get a rundown of a lot or most of the things that are sort of new releases in the store this week. Things that maybe you missed sometimes or I missed. So I'll be running through January 17th, 2025. So that feels weird saying that. All right. So it's kind of a big day. I mean, we're getting a little bit more sort of into the normal sized release dates as of this week. So hopefully there'll be some things here that'll be entertaining to you. And let's get started. We'll not drag this out too much. I always start with box sets if I have any. This week it's Grateful Dead Dick's Picks Volume 3. This is newly remastered by Jeffrey Norman, one of the greatest shows of the legendary 77 tour, featuring a monster medley of Estimated Prophet, Eyes of the World, Wharf Rat, Terrapin Station, and Morning Dew. Lacquers cut by Clint Hawley and Dave Polster at Well Made Music. Pressed at Gotta Groove Records, hand-numbered edition limited to 2,000 copies. I'm not sure where Gotta Groove is. I haven't heard that before. This is number 1321 of 2004 records. Runs in the $150-ish range. So not cheap, but if you've not been collecting those, they don't last long. If you have been collecting them, maybe you want the next one in the run of them. So there's that. Another Grateful Dead piece this week, just a reissue here of the Skull and Roses album. This done by Rhino. This is the 50th anniversary remaster, limited edition translucent yellow vinyl. It's their first certified gold album, recorded live entirely in New York and San Francisco, with definitive versions of Bertha, Wharf Rat, never recorded in studio, produced for release by David Lemieux. So, and it's translucent yellow vinyl. So, a lot of you may have that already if you're Grateful Dead fans, but it is the remastered version and it's on yellow vinyl. We're getting close to Valentine's Day. So here we go. Another Vince Guaraldi, Charlie Brown release, the Be My Valentine, Charlie Brown. The 50th anniversary extended edition. So what we've gotten so far, the Charlie Brown Christmas. We've gotten the Happy Thanksgiving Charlie Brown. We've gotten It Was a Short Summer Charlie Brown, and You're Not Elected Charlie Brown. And so now we get Valentine's Day. This is on Heartburn Red vinyl, the indie exclusive, featuring the Heartburn Waltz as the first track. I'm not sure if there are any vocals on this one. It doesn't look like it. The last one had, maybe there is. The last one had Joe Cool. The song Joe Cool was on You're Not Elected, Charlie Brown, I believe. This also, Vince Guaraldi's playing the ARP string ensemble, harpsichord. So this was done in 74, 75. And by that time, Guaraldi was experimenting a lot more with like synthesizers and things like that. So it's not just jazz piano stuff. So interestingly enough. All right. Probably the biggest new release of the week. And to some of you, you'll be really excited, and others will have no idea really what I'm talking about. But Mac Miller, and this is his new posthumous record, Balloonism. This is the exclusive white vinyl edition. I kind of love this cover. It's really kooky dooky. And there's like 14 tracks on here, I believe. This is on Warner. I don't know who produced this, if it's a sort of a group of people. For those of you who aren't aware, Mac Miller was a young hip hop artist, rapper, but also a singer a little bit and a lot. And he passed away at a very young age, and he had a lot of music that he'd recorded that had not gotten released. And they keep putting out more posthumous releases for him. He's sort of a young voice of kind of a generation from Western Pennsylvania. And his last album, Circles, the first posthumous album, Circles, was a huge hit. That was produced by John Bryan, who had worked with people like Fiona Apple. And so Mac was sort of looking for new textures and new sounds. He'd done a lot of hip hop and rapping stuff. Swimming, probably his most famous, most popular album, if you want to check something of his out. But I'll say this, during the pandemic, I felt like teenagers in particular really gravitated to Mac Miller. And if you're an older person, you wouldn't probably even have had any sort of like barometer for that at all. And it was probably one of my top 2 or 3 biggest selling artists during that entire period. And he still sells quite a bit, but a lot of those kids are getting a little older. A lot of them have bought the records, but he still sells constantly, especially those 2 albums I mentioned. But some of his older albums, the Kids mixtape is very popular. Divine Feminine I sell quite a bit. Best Day Ever. I mean, he has quite a few albums for an artist who hadn't even reached 30. So, and it was kind of a tragic, overdose story, unfortunately. But anyway, Balloonism is the new posthumous release, and I'd say it's been at least a year now, or maybe even almost 2, since the last post-mortem release came out. So maybe they're sort of getting a little more either exhausted on what was there, or sort of just saying, we're going to slow down the pace a little bit. I don't really know. There are 2 Blue Note classic reissues this week. So not Tone Poets, but from the classic series. We have Art Blakey's Like Someone in Love, which I'm assuming has a bit of a sort of a tie-in with Valentine's Day that they chose that. But features Lee Morgan on trumpet, Wayne Shorter tenor sax, Bobby Timmons on piano, Jamie Merritt on bass, and Art Blakey on drums. And so there's that. And the other one this week, they usually release in 2s, is Freddie Hubbard, Here to Stay. And this one also features Wayne Shorter on tenor sax, Cedar Walton on piano, Reginald Workman on bass, and Philly Joe Jones on drums. So that's kind of a nice pair there. I have not seen those 2 together, or I don't know if I've seen those reissued before. They might have been, but it's been a while. One of my most sort of anticipated albums of this first quarter of the year, and I really loved her last record. Was okay. It was kind of a piano based record. It was pretty mellow. But the one before that, I think called Ignorance, was one of my favorite records of 21, I think was the year, or 20, maybe 2020, whatever year it came out. But Tamara Lindemann and The Weather Station is the name of her band, or her project, and this one is called Humanhood. And Tamara, she's from Canada, and I'd say her music is sort of soft and kind of mellow, but this one's supposed to have more bursts of rock and energy on it, and she brought in more collaborators, more like aggressive texture, but we're not talking metal or anything here, but jazz textures, lots of clarinets, flutes, horns, things like that. Jazzy though at times, and they compare a lot to Joni Mitchell. I think there's a Joni Mitchell influence there. Shouldn't necessarily have the same kind of voice. It's a little deeper than Joni's was, at least at that stage. But she also reminds me quite a bit of like Talk Talk, sort of like mid-late period Talk Talk, at least some of the instrumentation. Now, that's just on these last couple of albums. I'm not as familiar with her earlier stuff, but was really looking forward to this. I liked the first song or two that I heard from it, and so I'll be picking that up. Another one that I am picking up, and I've been sort of really excited about this record, and excuse me, I actually did order the limited one that came from England in the fall, but they're releasing it here again on a splatter vinyl. So, sometimes the collector in me comes out too, and I love this band so much, and it's Saint Etienne with The Night. And I don't know if you remember, if you watched it, but this was my choice for my third favorite album of 2024. And it had not actually gotten a physical release in stores in the US by the time that video was done. So here it is finally. This will also be my recommend for the week, but I say that with a caveat that it is not for everybody. If you're looking for the Saint Etienne of olden days, which was like peppy sort of 60s inspired throwback pop music and a little bit of dance music, it's not that. This was sort of a side project type idea, or they actually made two albums sort of at the same time. The more pop related album is coming out later this year, but this is the more ambient sort of record, and it features the three members, Sarah Cracknell on voice and vocals, and then Bob Stanley and Pete Wiggs on either instruments or concepts. I'm not sure how much Bob plays, but he's a great conceptualist. And so this album is sort of meant to be, as I described in that video, a sort of travelogue of the feeling that you get when you leave the pub or your local whatever and you're going home. It's late at night and it seems very quiet outside, and still there's not a lot of activity. Maybe you're walking, you see like the reflections of the street lights and the puddles, or the shining on the ground from the lights, and then you get home and put on a record and eventually fall asleep. It's supposed to be music for that period. One friend described it as sort of almost like guided meditation, which it kind of is in a way, but it's a great album. It starts with Settle In, which is very kind of just like you feel like you hear the clinking of the glasses and things in the restaurant and the chatter and whatever. And then Half Light kind of sneaks in and is more this pillowy kind of synth vibe. It's very, and low bass, and Sarah's very warm vocals. It's kind of a short piece of music. Then Through the Glass is the third track. It's sort of more like a mellow, haunting, like that kind of seeing through windows that are very kind of cold and iced up maybe, or rain soaked. And then Nightingale is my favorite track on this album, which has the longest, most like ominous sounding reverb I've ever heard on a vocal on a record, that I think is just a very like trying to give you that sense of kind of lonely and still and very alone. These are the kind of records that I like listening to at night as I get older, because sometimes our days are so fraught with like stuff and things, and so it's good to kind of decompress a little bit. And so anyway, I recommend The Night. It's a couple other songs on here. Gold is a little more catchy. Pre-Flight is a song about sort of waving goodbye to your kids as they go off to school or something, or as they get older and they sort of leave the nest. And it's sort of, I think they were sort of writing a lot about what their personal experiences were during COVID and sort of the end of that. So the end. But anyway, I recommend Saint Etienne, The Night. Okay, back to new releases. David Gray, Dear Life. David had a huge hit with his White Ladder album about 20 years ago and still making records. So this is the new album featuring Plus and Minus, exclusive green vinyl edition. And he's Irish, I believe. And there's like 15 tracks here. It's a full new David Gray album. Um, Mark Wingfield, sort of interested in hearing what this has to offer. It's called The Gathering, and this features instrumentalists Gary Husband, Asaf Circus, Tony Levin, and Percy Jones. So that's definitely one to check out. Mark Wingfield. Steve Hackett, his latest is a live record featuring Blood on the Rooftops, The Barren Land, Jacuzzi, Supper's Ready excerpt. So there's some Genesis things on here too. Live Magic at Trading Boundaries. And yeah, says both solo and Genesis material. All right. Yola Tango, Genius and Love, or Genius Plus Love, available for the first time again in 20 years. This is a 2 LP set with over 2 hours of hard to find and unreleased tracks recorded between 1988 and 1995. So, Yola Tango fans, you've got something to celebrate there. Frank Black fans, Pixies fans, Teenager of the Year, back on vinyl again, the 30th anniversary. Classic album, cut at 45 RPM, pressed on 2 LP gold vinyl. This is a great album. If you're into the Pixies and stuff, I think this one has, I think this is one with, was it, looking for the song, whatever the single was. The long album, 22 tracks. But it was good. Frank was just cranking out the songs back in this era. So anyway, let's see. My UPS guy is delivering. Godly and Cream, Collected, featuring the inventive and eclectic duo's greatest tracks, including An Englishman in New York, Freeze Frame, Cry, Wide Boy, Under Your Thumb, Golden Boy, and A Little Piece of Heaven. Includes liner notes. Well, Cry was a really big hit in the US. This was actually sort of like what the video was a little bit like, was a lot of morphing. Although here their faces seem more cut into each other. Couple of tracks with Peter Cook. Yeah, that looks like a good set. If you're into like 10cc or whatever. The Pains of Being Pure at Heart, a reissue of their self-titled record, 15th anniversary on Silver Nugget vinyl on Slumberland Records. They were really great at this period. This Love is fucking right. Teenager in Love. Yeah, they're really great. And they kind of have been through ups and downs, I think, since. But that was a very good debut. A couple other interesting reissues. Low with Exit Papers. This was a song. It's a Songs by Low colored vinyl, special limited edition. This was some kind of a, it says a soundtrack by Low on here. It might even be instrumental, I believe. Metallic gold colored vinyl. Yeah. I mean, R.I.P. Mimi. Very tragic passing. Cancer's terrible. Songs Ohia, another artist who's passed, Jason Molina. And this is Travels and Constraints with Howler, a limited edition opaque yellow vinyl. So it's kind of an EP for him. He had some really great music as well. A lot of people are not as familiar with Jason Molina as they should be. A couple of Low Straitjackets reissues this week. We get Supersonic Guitars in 3D, which is pressed on red and blue vinyl. So I think, yeah. And they come with 3D glasses. And also Low Straitjackets, the Jet Set, which is pressed on orange vinyl. So Nick Lowe's current touring band have 2 reissues this week. And a couple other reissues here. Denise LEL, Trapped by a Thing Called Love. This is on Westbound Records. This Essential Reissue series features the Queen of the Blues 1972 Westbound debut, an undisputed classic of the R&B genre, released on vinyl for the first, reissued on vinyl for the first time. So Denise LEL gets some love. I think the picture sort of describes what the music sounds like there. Songs like Trapped by a Thing Called Love, Heartbreaker of the Year, Good Goody Getter, Catch Me If You Can, Hung Up, Strung Out. Yeah. And the deeper I go, the better it gets. And the last one here in reissues, love this record. Minnie Riperton, Come to My Garden, orchestra arranged by Charles Stepney. What a voice. I mean, people kind of know her from Loving You. Loving You is easy. Do. Everybody knows. Well, a lot of people know that. And then she goes for the high note, which I'm not going to do. But this album, oh my gosh, a little bit earlier, used prominently in movies. I think, was it Get Out or something that used? I'm trying to remember. But La Fleurs was the hit single, pressed on Eco Mix vinyl. Well, but I absolutely adore this album. So if you like early soul music with real beautiful textures and orchestral and whatever, yeah. A couple other things I think I should show. Dua Lipa has a live album out, live at the Royal Albert Hall. This is the double CD. There is a vinyl as well. And also The Secret of Us by Gracie Abrams is expanded with 4 more tracks. Daughter of J.J. Abrams. So, and out there, she's been opening for Taylor Swift. And also Mac Miller's Balloonism on cassette. Some people might be looking for that. And the cassette is blue, which is cool. I wish they'd put all of his records on cassette. I think some are, but some people say, oh, that's a novelty. But there are plenty of people out there that actually have cassette players now in their cars or in their houses. People rediscovering things that they thought they'd never take part in again. So all right, so just a couple more notes here, and then I'm gonna wrap this up today. Got a lot of stuff working on getting a bunch of collections out and whatever. So one thing I wanted to mention was The Weeknd. The band The Weeknd pushed his album back a week because of the fires in California. Still praying for those people. So his album is now scheduled for the 31st of January, not the 24th. So it will not be next week, but it will be 2 weeks away. I'm not so sure what pushing that back 1 week is going to make a difference, but it must in the promotion arena somehow. Also, there have been some new albums announced since the last time I gave. If you saw last week, I believe I gave a sort of a quick list of some things that have been announced for upcoming releases. So there were some new things that were announced since then. Jason Isbell has a solo record coming out in March, his first in over 10 years without the 400 unit. My Morning Jacket have a new album coming out in March. Perfume Genius has a new one. Lucy Dacus has a new one, so if you're a Boy Genius fan, you might want to check that out. And Yukimi from Little Dragon has a new record coming out. There are also more rumblings about Lady Gaga and 9 Inch Nails. So those, 9 Inch Nails have a tour that they're pretty much about ready to announce, and they've pretty much said that they're touring, and there's an album that's sort of been in the works. So, and Lady Gaga has been dropping hints and tracks for a while now. So I think those are probably pretty much a given, at least by June at the latest, I would think. And then also The Cure. Robert Smith keeps talking about a second album that he wants out by June. So, and you can kind of tell the first one had 8 tracks and they were sort of long, but it felt sort of like this is really part 1 of something else. So He says he's got 3, but let's not get hasty now. He'll probably get the other one out, and then it'll be another year or two. So, all right. And then, so artists I mentioned last time who have records coming out, just in case you missed it, by either March or sometime mid-February, Neil Young has a reissue or sort of a release of an album that never really came out. Another one of those. Lumineers' new album, FKA Twigs, that's actually in a week or two. Sharon Van Etten, Squid, The Horrors, and Panda Bear. Japanese Whispers. Japanese Breakfast. See, I'm thinking Cure now. Japanese Breakfast, her new record's coming out soon. Bob Mould. Destroyer, who I'm very excited about. Throwing Muses. Dean Wareham. So some older things. Music from older people too. Youth Lagoon, Spelling, and the Mickey Berenyi 3. Mickey being a member of Lush. And so she'd done a couple albums with the band Parashka, and since Lush since their reunion kind of sputtered a little bit, and sputtered, it sort of, she and Emma both ended up doing separate projects, but Parashka did 2 records and they were very good, and Justin Welch from Elastica played drums, and he's had so many offers to go out and play with other artists at this point. And the other guy, who I think was in Modern English, like broke his arm or something. So she and her husband, who was Moose from the band Moose in the 90s, got another player, I believe, and the 3 of them went out and sort of recorded an album. And so she's sort of doing her own thing as Mickey Berenyi or Mickey Berenyi 3, since Emma Anderson has her own project going as well. So there's a little Lush update for you. That's pretty much all I have today, and I worked my recommends in there. It was something new. So thank you all so much for paying attention, for continuing to watch, continuing to support. It's strange times, right? I think there's a Gorillaz song that Robert Smith sings called Strange Times. Yeah. Pretty fitting. So, all right. Catch you soon, and more on the way next week. Next week is a big week-ish, I think. There's a little more to show even, so, but I'm sure Mac Miller fans are going to be pretty hype about this. So, thanks. Have a great day. Peace. Check you next time. Ringo.